I was always a skeptic when it came to the idea of an afterlife. My years in the military taught me to rely on what I could see and measure. But one fateful day, a terrible accident changed everything I thought I knew. I was in a serious car crash on a lonely, winding road when I lost consciousness. When I opened my eyes, I found myself in a place that defied all logic, a place that felt like hell itself. The experience was so vivid and real that it shook me to my core and changed the way I look at life and death. At first, I did not understand what was happening. I remember floating above my body, watching the scene unfold with a detached sense of disbelief. I could see my own body lying on the roadside as emergency responders worked frantically to save me, but my mind was elsewhere. I felt a strange pull, as if something was drawing me away from the physical world. I felt both fear and an odd sense of calm, as if I were about to enter a place that held answers to all of life's mysteries. As I drifted away from my physical form, the world around me began to change. The bright, chaotic scene of the accident slowly faded into darkness. In its place, I found myself in a long, dim corridor with walls that seemed to drip with an eerie red light. The temperature dropped sharply, and I felt a deep, bone-chilling cold. I realized I was no longer on Earth. I was somewhere else entirely, in a realm that could only be described as hell. The corridor was lined with figures that moved slowly, their faces hidden in shadows. I could hear low, mournful sounds, as if the souls of the lost were crying out in pain. I tried to speak, to ask for help or an explanation, but no sound came from my lips. I was completely mute, unable to interact with the beings around me. The silence was oppressive, and the only noise was the distant echoing sound of what I can only describe as endless suffering. As I moved deeper into that dark place, I saw scenes that defied human understanding. I witnessed tortured souls trapped in cycles of endless torment. Some of them reached out to me with pleading eyes, their faces etched with despair. I felt their pain as if it were my own. The emotions that flooded me were overwhelming, and I struggled to comprehend the depth of the agony that filled this place. I was a soldier, trained to face danger, but nothing in my training had prepared me for this. The beings that roamed the corridors seemed to be guardians of this dark realm. They were neither entirely human nor completely demonic. Their presence was both horrifying and strangely mesmerizing. I felt as though they were there to remind me that I was no longer among the living. They moved with a deliberate grace, as if they were following a ritual that had been in place for centuries. Each step they took resonated in the silence, marking the passage of time in a realm where time itself seemed to have no meaning. I tried to find a way out, to understand what this place was and why I had been brought here. With every step, I searched for answers in the flickering shadows and in the faint echoes of whispered voices. There were moments when I thought I could see a glimmer of light far in the distance, a sign that there might be a way back. But every time I moved closer, the light would vanish, swallowed by the darkness. It was as if the more I sought escape, the deeper I became trapped in this cursed realm. At one point, I found myself standing before a massive archway. It was the only structure that stood out in the endless darkness. The archway was ancient, covered in symbols and markings that I could not decipher. I sensed that it held the key to understanding my situation, but I also felt an instinctive warning to turn away. The air around the archway was thick with a heavy energy that pressed down on me, making it hard to breathe. Despite the fear that gripped me, I moved closer, drawn by a need to know what lay beyond. As I passed through the archway, the environment changed once more. I was in a vast open space, a kind of courtyard that was illuminated by a dull red glow. In the center of the courtyard stood a large blackened tree with branches that reached out like twisted fingers. Beneath the tree, I saw a figure sitting quietly. The figure looked human, but there was something otherworldly about it. It radiated a sense of sorrow and inevitability. I approached slowly, unsure if this being could help me or if it was simply another part of the curse that had brought me here. The figure spoke in a soft, almost melodic tone. It told me that I had been chosen to witness the truth of the afterlife, a truth that most people are not meant to see. The being explained that the bridge I had once crossed in life, the one that connected the physical world to the spirit world, was cursed for over 300 years. This curse was not just a story, it was a reality that had claimed many souls before me. The figure said that I was now part of that story, and that my experience here was meant to serve as a warning to those still living. I listened intently as the figure spoke of ancient rituals and broken promises. It said that long ago people made a pact with forces they could not control. They built the cursed bridge as a symbol of their defiance, but in doing so, they sealed their fate. The curse was meant to punish those who dared to cross the bridge after dark, trapping them in a cycle of torment and despair. I felt a deep sadness as I realized that many had suffered because of this ancient mistake. The figure's words echoed in my mind as I wandered through the courtyard. I saw visions of the past, scenes of people crossing the bridge, each one meeting a tragic end. I saw families torn apart, dreams shattered, and lives lost in an endless loop of pain. It was a history written in blood and sorrow, and I felt a deep connection to every soul that had been touched by this curse. I began to understand that my experience was not just a personal ordeal, but a glimpse into a larger truth about life, death, and the forces that govern our existence. At one point, I was overcome with the desire to return to my life, to escape the horrors that surrounded me, but every attempt to leave only led me further into the maze of suffering. I realized that the curse was not just a punishment, it was a reminder that some actions have consequences that echo through time. I began to see the faces of my fallen comrades, the ones I had lost in battle, and I wondered if their souls were also caught in this endless night. The thought filled me with a deep sense of regret and longing for a peace I had never known. As the hours passed, I experienced a strange mix of fear and acceptance. I was forced to confront the fragility of life and the reality of the afterlife. I learned that the bridge was not a simple structure, but a symbol of the eternal struggle between light and darkness. The beings I encountered were not simply tormentors. They were the keepers of a balance that had been disturbed long ago. Their presence was a constant reminder that there are forces in the universe that are beyond our understanding. Forces that can reach into our lives and change everything in an instant. In the end, I realized that my experience on that cursed bridge was both a curse and a gift. It showed me a side of the world that few ever see. A side where the boundaries between life and death blur into a single, continuous thread of existence. I was forever changed by what I witnessed. The horrors of that place, the suffering of its inhabitants, and the ancient curse that bound them together had left an indelible mark on my soul. I returned to the world of the living with a new understanding of life's preciousness and a deep respect for the mysteries that lie beyond our grasp. I often find myself thinking back on that night and wondering what it all meant. Was it a glimpse of the afterlife, or merely a product of my damaged mind? I cannot say for sure. But one thing is clear. My experience on the cursed bridge changed me forever. I now see the world with different eyes, aware that there are secrets and forces at work that are far older and more powerful than any of us can imagine. The memory of that night stays with me, a constant reminder of the delicate balance between life and death, and the price that must be paid when we dare to challenge the unknown.